Hi, everybody. We're back, and this is episode 3 of our series 2 of the show, What That Means Is. So welcome. Welcome, Chris. Welcome, Ken.
Thanks. Hi, everybody.
So today, we're going to talk about something that I know very little about. So I'm going to be learning along with you today. We want to talk about the efficacy of the vaccine. I mean, I've heard a lot of things, but how you are going to take this kind of and undress it sort of and lay it out for us. The vaccine efficacy, overstated absolute versus relative, I don't know what. So you go ahead, take it away, stats man. And we're going to ask
help
questions.
us learn.
Yeah,
we are.
We're going to ask questions.
Oh, thanks a lot, everybody. Now, I want to be sure that people understand. We're going to talk about efficacy, which is defined as the effectiveness of the treatment, whatever that treatment is, like the vaccine.
Okay.
The effectiveness of the treatment at curing or preventing an illness. That's what efficacy means. So,
Sure.
the effectiveness of the treatment for curing or preventing an illness.
And what kind of scale is that on? Is that a percentage thing, or is that?
Well, it can be on all, talked about in all kinds of ways, and
Okay.
that's how we're going to get at this. We've all heard, we heard when this thing began, the efficacy of the vaccine was 99.9%.
Right, yeah,
And it was safe and it was effective. And folks, this won't come as a surprise coming from me, but you're going to find it's the same playbook that they used everything else. I keep talking about the same playbook. What did you call that in police work? It was modus operandi, right?
Right. Yeah.
Operandi.
That was my Latin. That's all
There
I
we go.
know.
For those of you who don't speak Latin, I think it's modus operandi.
Yeah.
So somebody will correct me, I know.
Or weren't good at police work.
So if you hear a cop saying modus operandi,
Run.
Just go,
Run.
oh, there he goes, speaking Latin again.
No, I'm not going to get...
Bilingual cop.
That's right. I'm not going to get too far in the weeds on this, folks. I'm not going to be talking to you about how the effectiveness of the vaccine wanes or disappears over time. I'm not talking about that. I want to talk to you about how they explained to you what efficacy was. And I think probably like you, myself, they told us that whatever that number was, it was 95% effective or it had an efficacy of 95%. You would think that provided you with some really, really good protection. But folks, like everything else, there was two different terms here. There was relative efficacy, and there was absolute efficacy. And what I'm going to do, and I'm going to, you can see it's coming up on the screen right now. I'm going to explain what the difference was between those two, and I'll let you be the judge as to why they reported it the way they did. Okay? So coming up on the screen right now, we're going to go through this in very slow terms, and so that we can all understand this, because this is
That's our speed, Chris.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of
Start
like
off slow and fade from there.
I'll speak for myself.
this is the part where you're watching the magician and they're doing the cup trick, right? And it goes so fast you can't see it. Well, we're going to slow that cup trick down, and we're going to explain this to you step by step. So imagine we have a randomly picked group of 200 people, just at random. And they have to be at random if they want to be representative of the population in Canada. We're diverse ethnically, we're diverse age-wise, we're diverse geographically, and all these things affect the efficiency of a medication. So, we come up with 200 people that are randomly selected from the Canadian population of 38 million, and we split those 200 people into two groups. Sample 1 and sample 2. They're even groups, so sample 1 has 100 people in it from the 200, and sample 2 has another 100. Now, sample 1...
And you randomly split them, too.
And we randomly split them up, so there's no pattern in that. Geographically, age-wise, comorbidity-wise, sex-wise. So, up on the screen right now, you can see there are two groups split into groups of 100. Each one of those little rectangles has 100 different representations of people in it. Sample 1, we don't give the vaccine to. We're evaluating the efficacy of a vaccine, so we don't give any treatment, no vaccine, to sample 1. Sample 2, we give the vaccine to. And then once we've done all that, we test to see who actually contracted the virus. In sample 1, and again, these are theoretical numbers for illustrative purposes. So in sample 1, again, there's 100 people, and when we do the testing, let's say we find 10 people infected. So 10 people out of 100 got infected. In sample 2, we gave them the vaccine, and in that instance, only 5 people out of the 100 got infected. So you can think of sample 1 that was untreated. They didn't receive the vaccine. There were 10 out of 100 people who got sick. And in sample 2 that received the vaccine, only 5 people out of the 100 got sick. So, how did they report those results to you? Well, one way of looking at it is, in the first sample, where 10 people out of 100 got sick, well, you had a 90% chance of being healthy, of not getting sick. In the second sample, you had 5 out of 100 get sick, so looking at it the other way, you have 95% chance if in sample 2, if you got the shot or you got the vaccine, you had a 95% chance of being healthy.
Right.
So no shot, 90% chance of being healthy. A shot,
Yep.
95% chance. So the difference between 95% and
Is
90% is 5%.
5%.
So you've improved by taking that vaccine. You've improved your risk or your chance of being healthy by 5 percentage points. From 90% untreated people were healthy, 95% were healthy with the vaccine. So you had a 5% increase in your chances of being healthy. So 5% efficacy. This is what you call absolute efficacy, because you consider the sample size, 100 people in the sample, and you look at how many people got sick or didn't get sick, and so it measures the absolute improvement in outcome, the absolute improvement of your health between the two samples. For me, when I think about a risk and I think about taking measures so that I reduce that risk, I want to evaluate it overall. In other words, if I had only a 10% chance of getting sick or a 90% of being healthy, and I took a vaccine and only gained a 5% increase in protection, I might want to really seriously consider what the side effects of that was, of the vaccine, what the cost of that vaccine is, in order to make that decision. Now, that brings us to the shell game. So when they reported to you the effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccine, they talked about relative efficacy. Now, what that means is, let's go back to our example that we had before. So we have the two groups. And in the first group, if you remember, they did not receive the vaccine, and 10 people were found to be infected. In the second group, again, 100 people, but they received the vaccine, and only 5 people out of 100 were found to be infected. So what they did is they took the 10 people that were infected without the vaccine, and then they took the 5 people that got infected with the vaccine, and they divided one over the other. So 5 people divided by 10 people equals 0.5 times 100 to turn it into percent. And guess what? They told you it was a 50% efficacy. So the relative efficacy reports to you the difference between the effect itself within the population group. In other words, there were 10 people affected without, there were 5 people affected with, so that's 5 over 10 is 1/2 or 0.5 times 100, 50% efficacy. Now that's not all. Because relative efficacy only deals with the differences in the outcomes between the two populations, doesn't consider the overall risk, let's rework this example just a little bit to explain what I'm talking about, because you're saying, Martha, what did he say? Keep the same 2 samples, sample 1 and sample 2. Each has 100 in it. Sample 1 receives no treatment at all, and only 2 of 100 are now sick. 2 in 100. sample 2, which got vaccine, now 1 in 100 got sick. So without treatment, your chance of being healthy was 98%.
Right.
With treatment, your chance of being healthy was 99%. So guess what? There's only a 1% difference in the absolute efficacy there, because you can see that absolute efficacy also speaks to your risk of getting sick in the first place.
Oh, yes.
Now, when I calculate the relative efficacy, guess what? It's exactly the same as it was the
Right.
first time. So you had 2 people in the untreated group that got sick. You had 1 person in the treated group. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5 times 100, 50% efficacy. So you can see in each of my 2 examples, your chance of being healthy is significantly different. In the first, your chance of being healthy without treatment was 90%. Your chance of being healthy with the treatment was 95%. So you had a 5% efficacy, absolute efficacy. In the second example, you had 2 people in the untreated group and 1 person in the treated group. So your absolute efficacy was 99% healthy to 98%, 1% efficacy. But in relative terms,
Yes,
in the next one, it was still 50% vaccine effectiveness. So,
Wow.
Ergo, arithmetic gaslighting.
yeah.
There
Now,
you go.
you got to ask yourself the question, why would they report it to you like that? I can think of a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Why would they report it? And by the way, did they tell you? When the doctor sat down with you and said they were going to put this experimental mRNA vaccine in you, did he explain to you? When you said, well, how effective is it, doc? Did they say to you, well, 95% effective, but that's relative efficacy? And you would have said, what?
They didn't say that's relative.
Nobody
efficacy.
did.
Nobody said it.
Nobody said
No.
it was. So
Wow.
is this not the same playbook? Is this not the same, I'm not a lawyer, alleged misleadingness?
Yeah, leading the witness or whatever.
I mean, if you ask me, Ken, what's the chances of me getting into a car accident if I'm going at 100 miles an hour or 200 miles an hour? You don't want me to make up some kind of a number which doesn't change with your overall risk,
Right.
because that's what happened here. The relative efficacy stayed the same, but your actual risk of getting the disease and getting sick changed significantly between the 2. So how did you make informed consent on that? How do you guys think they made informed consent?
So what you're saying, based on your example here, is then they would pitch that as getting the shot is 50% better than not getting the shot?
Yeah.
That's how they would sell that?
They said to you, and you can see it in all our reports, that the vaccine had a 95% or an 85%. It kept going down, folks. And it was also affected by time. That's why even they admit they need you to take a booster, because it wanes. There is no protection after who knows what, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, who knows.
Yeah.
And that was more missing information in the Pfizer reports, where they
Right.
said not evaluated
Right.
for a long time. So, but nonetheless, all they said to you was it had a 95% or an 85% efficacy.
Seems to me I also heard stats like in the 90s.
Yeah. So that would lead you to believe that you were protected 95% of the time. But as you can see, they were giving you a relative efficacy, so it doesn't reflect what your actual risk was.
So then what they'd have to do maybe is sweeten the pot and say things like, you can't go to a restaurant till you get this, or you can't fly till you get this, or you can't travel, you can't work till you get this. Work.
It's a big one.
Yeah, but I mean, they made it easy for themselves, because if they reported relative efficacy, it never reported. Take these numbers. Remember, we did 2 scenarios. We did one that had 10 people infected, one that had 5, and then we had one that had 2 people infected, and they had 1, and we used 100 people. You could do that with 1 million people in the sample.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you can still have
Right,
a
yeah.
relative efficacy that doesn't vary. But if it's, let's say you have 1,000,000 people in each sample, just to consider the numbers, 1,000,000 people in each of those samples, and sample one had 2 people infected, and sample one had 1 person affected. Well, your relative efficacy is still 50%,
Right.
but your chance of getting sick is 2 in 1,000,000 or 1 in 1,000,000. You know, so the relative efficacy is pretty much meaningless to an ordinary citizen trying to make a decision on an experimental mRNA vaccine.
Nobody understood that that's what was happening. We just heard 50%, 60%, 75%, 83%, 92%. I mean, everybody understands those kinds of percentages, but nobody knew where they were getting those numbers from, really. I mean,
No.
we
No.
blindly trusted it.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't we? I mean, we thought that they were looking out for us.
We've learned a lot.
We have.
It kind of stuns us into silence.
We're gonna take a minute.
Very clever. Very clever. I mean, it is clever. You have to admit that.
It's manipulation, though.
Yeah. It is.
Unethical.
Absolutely. You know, when you're just showing the difference between two things, it's like, you know, it's kind of, I'm thinking off the top of my head, folks. It's like when you're driving along the highway, on a 4-lane highway, and you're going 100 kilometers an hour. This is good. Okay, this just gives me, this is not rehearsed, folks.
Inspiration.
We're driving along a 4-lane highway. Chris is in one car, I'm in the other car. We're going, at first we're both going 100 kilometers an hour, and he's sitting right beside me. His relative speed is 0.
Right.
Because he and I are both going 100 kilometers an hour, and so we're you know how that pesky driver pulls up to you on the left-hand lane on a 4-lane and just keeps coming
Stays
along
there.
beside you the whole time. Our relative speed or relative efficacy is
The
0.
relative.
When Chris speeds up because he's tired of looking at me through the window, and now he's going 150 kilometers an hour, I'm going 100. Our relative speed, relative efficacy is 50 kilometers an hour, even though I'm going 100 and he's going 150.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like this. So if Chris was driving 300 kilometers an hour and I was driving 300 kilometers an hour, our relative speed would still be 0. And that's what they've done here. You know, I wish I had a couple of shells here. It's the shell game. You know, that's what this is. And so you have no idea, in my example of Chris driving 100 kilometers an hour next to me at 100, or if he's driving 300 kilometers an hour and I'm driving 300 kilometers an hour, you have no idea what the risk is that we're both putting in ourselves. We're driving 100 kilometers an hour, there's risk, but you know, it's an acceptable risk. Driving 300 kilometers an hour is risky, and yet if I report it as a relative speed between the two of us, it's 0.
You know what? That is an excellent example because of the risk factor. I mean,
Yeah.
300 kilometers an hour is, I mean,
Risky.
that's killer risky.
So, you know, these folks who did this are supposed to be the scientific minds of our time. Now, again, I'm not going to reach into their hearts and tell you why they did this, but if they're the scientific, maybe they're just so smart that they didn't know that we couldn't understand this. You know, it reminds me when I was in first year engineering in university, we had probably one of the most brilliant academic professors I've ever met in my life.
Wow.
And he's teaching a very complicated subject to first year engineering students. It was dynamics, which is the study, a mathematical study of things in motion. Very complicated, folks. I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember that professor. And he was so far advanced from us, he could not teach it to us because he couldn't understand what we did not know. Now, maybe these super duper brilliant people at the farming companies and Teresa Tam, because she's incredibly smart and such an incredible doctor, by the way.
Well, that's what Fauci, because he is, in fact, the science.
Oh, yeah, he is the science, right? So maybe they just couldn't understand that dolts like us couldn't understand. But of course, they never labeled it as relative or absolute. Perhaps if they would have given us the two numbers, you know, the relative efficacy is 10% and the absolute is 1%, maybe we would have asked the question.
Right.
But they never gave us that
They
option.
didn't explain it to us like that.
No. We're kind of stunned to silence here,
Yeah,
folks.
it is.
Because
It's
we didn't
mind-boggling.
rehearse this ahead of time.
It is mind-boggling. I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I think? When you use that example of that professor, there are those that figured it out because they manipulated the numbers to, bring us that data. But I would venture to say that a lot of people that were pushing this and, believe it's safe and effective, blah, 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 had
No
no
idea.
foggy clue
Yeah.
about what
Totally
you just
agree
said.
with you.
Yeah.
But they had we talked about fiduciary duty before.
Right.
If a young woman goes into her doctor and she's pregnant, and he's pushing her to take that drug, that untested drug, he had, in my opinion,
100%.
he had a fiduciary duty to
100%.
know, to do research on it, not just
Yeah.
to have the pharmaceutical salesman come in and say, "Hey, Dr. Drysdale, here's a new drug. Oh, is it good? Yep."
Yeah.
And then just start doling
We'll
it
take
out.
you for dinner.
Yeah.
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 I mean, we talked about my university professor, and I'm just thinking of him now, and I'm thinking of another example, the other end of the spectrum, where my professor was, he was just truly baffled that we couldn't understand what he was talking about. But another example is the person that's walking along in the library, and there's a $5 bill on the ground. Same person walking along that same aisle of the library, it's a $1,000 bill. Do you think the reaction might be different for a lot of people? But in this instance, it's a $2 billion bill sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
Do you see the difference, folks? It's kind of relative and absolute.
Yeah.
You find $20 or $100, and you're maybe going to look around and ask something. But if it's $1 billion, and you can get away with it, maybe that's enough to corrupt.
Well,
Wow.
I'm thinking also about your example of the fiduciary duty. I'm guessing that, and I don't want to make this about doctors necessarily, but they would have known their duty, but so much pressure was also applied
Mm-hmm.
to them,
Yeah.
on them.
Was it?
Well, I think in some cases, I do think that, so I think there's got to have been physicians that knew, this is not,
Many of
it's
them
not,
lost their license.
not satisfactory. But, there's so much at stake, their jobs, their licenses, and, I mean, if everybody moved together as one body, it would have been very powerful.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you've got a fragmented situation,
Yeah.
this was what the goal was,
Yeah.
I believe, right from the top down, from the beginning.
Right.
The whole orchestration was
Yeah.
to just fragment people from all walks of life everywhere, especially those in the medical community.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, remember we keep talking about the same playbook. This is the same playbook.
Sure it is.
That person's a misogynist. That person is some other ethnicity. My point, half Scottish and half Polish. I should be beating myself up because I'm half of Scottish and half Polish, and we can't get along together, right? Because that's what the government told you. So they're trying to split you up on everything they can. They split up the doctors because their board said, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't prescribe ivermectin. It's a safe drug's been used for 75 years.
Mm-hmm.
In certain countries they take it like candy in the morning to prevent disease, and yet we couldn't use it.
Hydroxychloroquine, that is.
No, hydroxychloroquine and
ivermectin as a
ivermectin.
candy
Yeah.
too? Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
they use that for parasites in Africa, and and it's been around for I don't know. But it's the same. You can see we're all kind of stuck.
Well,
the same-
it's divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and the same was done with policemen and RCP.
Yeah.
I mean, we've
Oh,
been
yeah.
trying to, appeal to them to please, do the investigations. But again, they fragmented the people, and
Right.
there's, how do you know that your buddy's even, you can't talk. It's
No.
it's
No.
a very, I think, very nefarious tactic.
Yeah. But also, I think this is a really good example, folks. You can see that a lot of people said, absolute efficacy and relative efficacy. Oh, this is a scientific, mathematical thing. You can't understand it unless you're an expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you understand this now? And my question to you is, you could have understood this before. There's nothing here. This is just arithmetic, and I always, I always make a differentiation between mathematics and arithmetic. Arithmetic's adding, in my mind, adding, subtracting. Rosalie knows what the definition is because when she talked about it in a previous episode with her arithmetic gaslighting. Is this arithmetic gaslighting, folks?
This is, to me, the definition of arithmetic gaslighting.
Is that the theme? But again, I want folks to understand that everything looks really complicated from the outside, and we all, including myself, had the tendency to go, oh, I can't understand that. But you see, we spent 4 or 5 minutes, and we explained this to you.
Probably a few more than that.
Yeah, whatever it was.
But no, you did an excellent job,
Yeah,
Ken, breaking
yeah.
that down, and I understand it now better, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent job. Good. You're a good teacher.
Just keep in mind, folks, if you want to remember the principle here, think of Chris going down the highway at 100 kilometers an hour and me beside him, and he won't get out of that darn passing lane and just get the pass over with.
Got to get home.
Guy's got to do it. Guy's got to do.
Yeah, that's right.
So, is there any other things that we want to talk about?
I don't
on
know.
this
Do you have
subject?
anything to add, or do you have any questions at all in addition?
Well, what I like to say when we started this program was I like it when we talk to people that and assume they don't know anything, just what you were saying your professor couldn't do.
Yeah.
You've been able to. I was thinking of kids in grade 5 when you were explaining that, and I'm thinking they get it.
Yeah.
The way you explained it, kids in grade 5 would get it.
Yeah.
And I think that was excellent.
You know what I think? I think they didn't want us to know. They didn't want us to ask questions. They did not want us to know these numbers and how they're slicing and dicing. And governments all over the world did that.
Yeah.
So that I'm suggesting that you don't have to take the whole video, or if you want to, by all means do. But even how Ken described that, take that, splice it, send it off. That should actually go all over the world, that people start realizing what was done. And I think a lot of people weren't aware of it. Like we're talking about doctors, you name it. They didn't know, really, even they didn't know themselves. They weren't asking the questions themselves. So they didn't know how this gaslighting of the numbers was being done.
So have they become too dependent on the drug sales people? I mean, let's look at it this way. During the COVID, the chief commissioner of the FDA, Federal Drug Administration in the United States, he's now on the board of Pfizer.
Yeah, there you go.
He's now on the board of Pfizer. Let that sink in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
now he's lobbying the people that used to work for him at the FDA on these vaccines.
So, ladies and gentlemen, now we know that we need to ask questions. And by all means, do not be afraid to ask questions. Never be ashamed to ask questions. When I was in real estate, people would say to me sometimes, "Can I ask you a stupid question?" And I'd say, nothing is a stupid question. Sometimes I didn't know the answer. I'd say, you know what? I have to find out. I'll get back to you. There is no shame in not understanding something, not knowing something. Ask questions. If you're not sure, ask. That was an excellent explanation, and you're a very good teacher. Well done.
That was very good.
Yeah, and you were saying about the grade 5s that you could. How did you say that to me another time? That if a grade 5er can in turn explain.
Yeah, you've given that person enough information. If that person understands it enough to retell it,
Yeah,
if they have that information.
I can.
here.
I think I can kind of maybe retell it the way you did, because but
Well, I think you just think of
Yeah.
Chris in his car.
yeah,
That's really it right there. I wish I would have thought of that before we did the film, because I probably just would have showed you 2 cars driving down the road. Just to recap on that, Chris and I are driving, side by side on a 4-lane highway. He's going 100 kilometers an hour. I'm going 100 kilometers an hour. Our absolute speed is 100 kilometers an hour, but our relative speed is 0 because we're both traveling the same speed. So, relative speed doesn't give you any indication of how risky our driving is or whether we're going to get a ticket.
For sure.
exactly. So I guess that wraps us up for today.
Yeah, I think that's about it. You know what? This was a very intimidating subject for folks, but I think you can see here that just like everything else, before someone explains it to you, it always looks intimidating. It always looks scary. But when you get it explained to you in a proper way by someone who's not trying to mislead you or sell you something, it's truly understandable.
And it is mind-boggling. I mean, really,
Yeah.
little stunned into silence. Do you have any
And,
last
well,
thoughts or words?
I agree with you. It just feels like maybe that's what they wanted us to be, was intimidated.
Oh, there's not a doubt in my mind, actually.
I mean, isn't it their job, though, to explain it to us minions in a way that our limited minds could understand? And I'm speaking in their terms.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, how else can you explain this?
but we're here to say we don't have limited understanding and we don't have limited minds, and you're very smart. Keep asking questions. Satisfy yourself. Do not be intimidated.
That's right. That's for sure.
I'm right about that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll see you next time. Goodbye from Rosalie.
Chris Riddell, bye for now.
And Ken Drysdale, and remember to keep your comments coming in. Visit us on our website. The address is along the ribbon there. Visit us on the website. Give us your comments. Get out there and circulate the information, folks.
Take care.
Bye for now.
See you
So-
later.
Bye-bye.